going to take questions and discussion about Ken's presentation together after the next speaker. Our second speaker today is Leonor Stjepic, who is from the organization RABB, which is an organization dedicated to delivering innovative and effective treatments for injuries, particularly skin injuries and burns. And I've no doubt that she was heavily influenced by her experiences working in Croatia in less happy times as a volunteer in the refugee camps there. She has a biog, which is in your paperwork, which makes certainly my life and probably most of us in this room look rather tame. She's a highly energetic and effective individual who can bring people together to make things happen. So it's a great privilege to have her here today to give her talk entitled, "Do You Have to Be a Charity Entrepreneur in This Economic Climate?" Hello.
Okay, so no pressure there to perform. So my name is Leonor Stjepic. What I'm not very good at is getting technology to work. Okay. And I'm the CEO of RABB, which is an independent registered charity, and the CEO of a company called Smart Matrix Limited. And I do both roles full-time. So it is not that I'm an entrepreneur that runs a charity or a charity CEO that runs a company. It's something that I do both jobs. RABB is a medical research charity that has a turnover of about £1 million. I know for a lot of you that doesn't seem a lot, but that does actually put us in the top 10% of UK charities. Okay, so we were founded 25 years ago by 4 consultant plastic surgeons, and they were frustrated that the research that was being done at the time in their field was not meeting clinical need, and that's why they wanted to create RABB. Our aim is to bring scientists and plastic surgeons together, because we were founded by plastic surgeons, to develop solutions to clinical problems. We don't do academic research. All the research that we do is aimed at meeting real clinical need, and we hear about that clinical need through our close interaction with surgeons, but also with patient groups. We've done a lot of research in the last 25 years. Some of it is already in patients. Some of them are techniques that are used by surgeons today. Some of them are going into clinical trial. In fact, Neil Murray, who spoke earlier today, one of his companies is commercializing some research that started at RABB. And our current interests are biomaterials, stem cells and prosthetics, but that may change because we do tend to meet clinical needs. So if somebody comes to us and says that there's a real need in this area, we'll look at it. And I'll give you an example. We're currently looking at some solutions that the oil industry use in cleaning their boats and whether we can convert it into a medical product that can be used for skin grafts. I believe that an organisation has to have values if it's going to be sustainable. And this is probably something that everyone has here. Not everyone has them written down. We've chosen to write them down. And this isn't just true of charities. And if you look at, for example, in the commercial sector, a company that has very strong values that has succeeded is John Lewis, whilst other companies that haven't had these strong values have fallen by the wayside or aren't doing so well. Now, the first 3 you might think, yep, that's what you'd expect from a charity to have those sorts of values. The number 4 and 5 are somewhat different. You don't tend to find that charities look at taking an entrepreneurial approach, and innovation is something that we do genuinely live and breathe, probably because we're a charity and we have to work on limited resources. We created a product called Smart Matrix, which is a dermal replacement for full thickness wounds, but is also something that could be used as platform technology for tissue engineering. So we believe it can be used for repairing heart walls and building organs. And we'd got to the stage where we knew it had to go to market, because how else was it going to get into patients if it didn't go to market? But we were facing the valley of death. How did we cross it? We as a charity were not able to take that commercial route. That's not part of our mandate. So we had to find a way of dealing with this. And we certainly were not in a position to fund a clinical trial. As I said, we're a £1 million charity, and that £1 million is spent. Charities aren't really allowed to keep reserves for years and years and years. You have to spend the money. So that £1 million is spent every year. So trying to find additional funding for a clinical trial was going to be quite a challenge for us. So we were facing, a future. What do we do with Smart Matrix? Do we publish a paper and put it on the shelf and hope someone else will come along one day and take it up? Or do we really go out and try and find a way of getting it to patients? And that's what the dilemma that the trustees put to me to try and solve. So we had 3 options. We could either scrap the project and say, right, we've done what we can, but that was unacceptable, because not just because of the donations that we'd spent on getting the project to where it was, but also because we genuinely believe it's going to make a difference to people and improve treatment for millions of people. So it wasn't something that we were prepared to think about. We could try and find a buyer, but as we've heard earlier today, big pharma companies are interested in stuff that has been de-risked, and at this stage it was too risky. So they said, oh, it's great science, we're really interested, but come back to us when you've got data in humans, and I'm sure that's something all of you have heard. Or we find a collaborator, but the problem, an industrial collaborator, but the problem we had is that this was in early 2010, it was the recession, and a lot of people were saying we just cannot take on something new right now. So we had to decide where next. Going back to what do we need to ask ourselves? Well, we needed to ask ourselves, could RAFT raise the funds for the commercialisation? And the answer was probably not as a charity. If we did raise it, should we be spending donations on commercialisation? Is that something that our donors would want us to be doing? What would we do with the IP? Is this something, and I go back, it wasn't within our charitable mandate to do this, so is this something the charity should be doing? And what was the alternative? So this was my light bulb moment, which, despite the photograph, was not whilst I was lying on a couch dressed as an Egyptian. It actually took months and months and months of coming up with all sorts of different ideas and discarding them and thinking through and talking to people and trying to find a solution. And our solution was to set up an independent biotech company, a for-profit company that would be funded by investment. So it was not part of the charity wasn't going to own it, the charity wasn't going to put any money into it, it was going to be a completely different company. So Smart Matrix Limited was born in August 2010, but it took 12 months to create. So why did it take 12 months? Well, I'm sure all of you understand what is the typical work that goes into setting up a company. Finding the right board, writing a business plan, doing everything that needed to be done. But on top of that, we had additional pressures as a charity, because first of all, apparently no other charity in the UK has ever done this before. So we had to actually go and get permission from the Charity Commission to do this. I had to get permission from the trustee board because they are trustees and they have a very specific agenda, which is about, fulfilling the charitable purpose. And so not all of them were convinced that we should go down this route, and we had to do a lot of work to try and make sure that everybody felt comfortable about this. And I am delighted to say that not one of them left because of this. We had to create a very complex conflict policy because there were potential conflicts of interest, and we had to make sure that everybody was very happy with that, including the Charity Commission. We had to pass this through the Charity Commission. We also needed the buy-in of the RAFT donors. RAFT donors, which range from grants, trusts and foundations that have given us grants, to people who, literally go out and do a run or have a coffee morning to raise money for us. They'd raised about 1.7 million over the years to fund this, and we need to feel that they were happy with this, that they had buy-in with this, because we felt a very strong obligation that we needed to honour their wishes and their donations. And because of the charity link, because of the reputational risk to RAFT, we had to have a sort of, very robust business plan and be very sure that everything we said in it could be verified to the nth degree, Because if anybody criticised RAFT, we needed to be able to say, no, 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 we have really thought this through and we have really checked this out. So it was a lot of work for us. Now, the reason why I put that slide up is because that is the comment, or variations of the comment, that I heard time and time and time again when I sort of started talking to people about this. And that's not the normal way to do it, particularly from people within the charity sector. There was a lot of people saying, no, 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 you can't do that, you can't do that, that's not the way we do things. So it was quite daunting to have sort of go to meetings and have people go, well, it sounds interesting, but that's not really the way you do things. But we felt that, very strongly that we had to do something different to get this research into patients. So it was set up as a commercial company with a venture philanthropy framework. So it's a company, the investors will get a return. I don't know if anyone is familiar with the phrase venture philanthropy, but just to summarize for those of you who aren't, philanthropy is about giving, so it's about people giving money for a social benefit, but it's venture philanthropy because it's actually based on the principles of venture capital. So it means that people don't just give you a donation. If people are going to invest because they feel there's a social benefit, they still want to see that all the work that one would put in for an investment has been done, and they still do their due diligence. But it's a sort of a slightly different way of investing. We also created a very engaged partnership between RAFT, the charity, and Smart Matrix Limited, because we knew that the only way this could work would be if we actually had both organisations working very closely together and having shared interest and a shared interest in the outcome. Rather than give a traditional return on investment, although they will get a return on investment, we wanted to maximise their social impact. And that was really what we sold it on. We said to people, you will get a return on your investment. This is, the standard stuff that you're used to seeing, but there's an added social benefit. And that was what really attracted investors to us, that they could see that this was something different. And we created a virtual company. So we actually only have one employee, which is Andrew, who's our Chief Financial Officer. All the other services are provided by the charity under a service agreement and by a network of experts who work with the company. Because what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to raise lots and lots of money and then have to pay for infrastructure. And that's where kind of the charity ethos comes in, that we don't like spending money. Oops. We also felt that Smart Matrix Limited had to be run and founded on the same values as RAFT. And again, we couldn't have that synergy if we didn't have shared values. I am the CEO of RAFT, as well as the CEO of Smart Matrix Limited. That was not what I had intended, but that was actually what all the investors insisted on. But I am still a RAFT employee, so I am not employed by the company. I don't get paid by the company. My time is charged to Smart Matrix Limited at cost plus 10%. That was done under a independently negotiated service agreement. And that is the same for all of the staff at RAFT who work on this project, where they all remain RAFT employees. RAFT is a shareholder of Smart Matrix Limited. It hasn't invested any money in it, but it is a shareholder. And also, it couldn't work unless there was a win-win for both the company and the charity, and we believe that there is. And so it is about having a close relationship rather than the sort of traditional hands-off, we've licensed our IP to a biotech and now we have nothing else to do with it until one day hopefully it'll all work and we'll get some nice royalties. That was not the way this was going to work. So what are the differences and the similarities? Well, the differences are that obviously RAFT is a not-for-profit company, organisation, and Smart Matrix Limited is a for-profit company. And RAFT is funded by donations, and Smart Matrix Limited is funded by investors, by people who are going to get a return on their investment. But we have more similarities than we have differences. So as I said, we have the shared values, we have shared team members, we have a focus on delivery in both organisations, we have an interest in social impact, and obviously there's shared equity in Smart Matrix Limited. This was not easy going. We had a lot of challenges to meet as RAFT. And the first one was that we have a scientific team who are academic scientists who we've put into a commercial setting, but who still remain employees of the charity. And that was a major challenge because we were asking them to think differently, act differently, but still sort of swap between, you know, one organisation and the other constantly. We do this sort of juggling act constantly. And often the scientists were very passionate about the science, and they were very clear that the reason they were working for a charity was for social benefit. So often we were asking them to sort of think about how they presented the science and the paperwork in a way that just meant nothing to them. So we had to sort of really kind of help them understand that this was a way of us reaching our charitable mission. There was a big issue about patents versus publications. You know, for anyone who's an academic scientist in the room, you'll know that a big marker of success is how many publications do you have to your name. But if you publish stuff, you can jeopardize your patent. And we actually had to embargo some publications, which did not make me very popular with my scientists, because they were saying, yeah, but hang on a minute, it's my job to go to this conference and present this. And I was saying, well, sorry, you can't, you know. So we had to find a way of managing those expectations, and that is something that we still juggle with, you know, on a day-to-day basis. Because, you know, there are potential conflicts of interest, you know, especially as I'm CEO of both organisations, so we had to find a way of managing those. And, you know, my staff will get used to me coming into a meeting and saying, right, in this meeting, I am the RAFT CEO, and everything I say will be as the RAFT CEO, and then sort of go into another meeting and say, right, I am now the CEO of Smart Matrix Limited, and everything I say now is a CEO of Smart Matrix Limited, which actually may not be something that I need to know as the CEO of RAFT. So it's a constant changing of hats, which is quite interesting. It's been a real learning curve for everyone in the charity. I don't want to underestimate how difficult it's been, because it's not something that we've ever done before. So there was a real learning curve for everyone. And we also have a very diverse set of stakeholders to manage, because we don't just have to manage the investors and their interests, but we also have to manage public perception and the donors and the scientific community and the surgeons and some people who have supported us for 25 years and who are sort of saying, yeah, but you've never done this before, we don't understand it. Because of the charity link, we actually have a lot more public scrutiny as a company, because there is that, you know, we're constantly thinking as a company, right, if we do this, how's it going to impact on RAFT, because there's a reputational risk. And we had to change the mindset, both of the people at RAFT, and there were people at RAFT for whom getting into bed with, you know, commerce was like dirty. You know, they felt, oh, that's not right. And there were also people who we came across in the commercial environment who said, yeah, but if you're a charity, you know, you're not commercial, you don't understand business. Even though my career, I spent half of it in the private sector and half of it in the charity sector, there was this sort of, you know, stereotypical mindset that we came across. But there are benefits. So the benefits to RAFT is that our research is going to get into patients, and we will therefore be carrying out our charitable mission. If this model works, and we believe it will, and it has done so far, then we might be able to roll it out for some of our other research to get our other research into patients. Because RAFT is a shareholder, if this all works, RAFT will receive funding that it can then plough back into its research. It creates a virtuous circle. And because of the service agreement, RAFT gets a certain amount of money each month. And I can tell you that as a charity in this economic climate, getting a set amount of money each month that you can count on is a blessing, you know, really. The professional development of the staff at RAFT has been enhanced by getting exposure to this different world. They've learned a lot, all of them, not just the scientists, but all of them across the board. And also, we've been, as RAFT, we've been able to leverage some of the company's contacts. So, for example, we have investors coming to visit RABB because they actually want to see smart matrix being made in the lab and meet the scientists. And they've gone away so enthused about RABB that they've actually become donors. And that wasn't something that we'd planned, but it has come about because they've sort of are now saying to us, yeah, but we really love that research that you're doing there. How can we be involved? The benefits to Smart Matrix Limited, and again, I said it had to be win-win. Smart Matrix Limited was created thanks to some really high level of pro bono support that RABB was able to leverage. So, for example, to give you two examples. One is that when I first wrote the business plan, I was able to go to one of our supporters, who was MD of Goldman Sachs at the time, and say to him, please can you get your healthcare analyst to look at this business plan and tell me whether it makes sense, because I was not even going to take it to the trustees if I was talking rubbish. And so they got their people to look at it, give me some input into some of the financial modelling and some of the market assumptions, and that's the sort of, pro bono support that most startups wouldn't get. We were also able to get over £500,000 worth of legal support from a firm of lawyers called Deckerts, who helped us set up the company, write the IM, helped us with all the paperwork that needed to be done. Again, that's not something that a normal startup would be able to access. Smart Matrix Limited has access to further research being done at RAFT, particularly around adaptations of Smart Matrix for other purposes. And this could enhance the value of Smart Matrix and therefore makes their investment go further. And that's actually being funded at RAFT. The investors are really enthusiastic about the social benefit. They love it. They love that they can say, not only am I investing in something, but it's actually going to have a social benefit. And we can make that very clear. And we can actually, get them to meet people who are going to benefit from this research. And that really makes it meaningful to them. Also, because we have 25 years of expertise, that enhances the expertise within the company. So it's not just someone saying, well, look, I'm here and I've been doing this, a startup, and I'm a year old or 2 years old or 3 years old or 6 months old. There is a 25-year history behind this. And Smart Matrix Limited is able to leverage the contacts within the charity. So, for example, a lot of the surgeons of the 54 surgical research fellows that RAFT's had in its history, I think nearly a quarter of them are consultant plastic surgeons. A quarter of the consultant plastic surgeons in the UK are ex-RAFT staff, and they have fed into creating the clinical trial protocol. They've given advice. A couple of them are going to be the clinicians involved in the clinical trial. And again, they're doing that because of RAFT, not because they're being approached from a commercial perspective. So that's our experience. Can you be a charity entrepreneur? Should you be a charity entrepreneur in this economic climate? I would say the answer is actually probably charities don't have a choice, because if we're going to get across this valley of death, if we're going to get the funding in to do it, I don't really see any other way. Thank you.